I killed my brother and ruled by fear in ancient Rome. Do you know my story? My name echoes across lands vast and powerful Caracalla. Born Lucius Septimius Bassianus, later known as Marcus Aurelius Severus Antoninus Augustus. To many, my name conjures images of blood-soaked sands, relentless ambition, and ruthless strength. But now, I lay bare my tale, not merely to be judged as the tyrant whispered about in dark corners, but as a man moulded by circumstance, ambition, and the crushing weight of the purple. I ask, what becomes of a boy born in the shadow of empire, nurtured on its promises and scarred by its betrayals? Born in 188 CE, I was the first son of Septimius Severus, a hardened African general who clawed his way to imperial power, and Julia Domna, a brilliant Syrian noblewoman steeped in the philosophy of Emesa. The union of their disparate worlds birthed in me both fierce ambition and a bitter, dangerous fragility. I was raised with my brother, Geta, under the blinding light of my father's relentless expectations. But beneath the lavish feasts and public spectacles, there was a coldness, a calculated harshness, a father who, while he bestowed favour, reminded me at every turn that power was both our inheritance and curse. I was schooled in the ways of governance, military arts, and rhetoric. Tutors filled my head with tales of glory, conquests, and the fate of rulers who were too weak to defend what was theirs. My mother's sharp mind and presence were a salve to my father's iron rule, but even she could not shield me from what I was being shaped to become. I devoured the histories of Alexander the Great, longing to match his feats, to see the world kneel before me as it had for him. I came to believe in the grandeur of absolute power until I learned its bitterest cost. Family life was not as the poets and playwrights would have you believe. It was riddled with intrigue, suspicion, and a rivalry with Geta that would one day end in tragedy. Even as children, we felt the weight of our father's ambition crushing any hope of true brotherhood. Behind every celebration, each honour bestowed, lurked whispers of plots and ambition. The seeds of division had been planted early, and they grew as we did. This, then, was the path set before me, a path of inevitable conflict, treachery, and fate. My life was not one of ease. It was a crucible of blood, power, and ceaseless expectation. And so I ask you, as my story unfolds, to question, is it the man who shapes the crown, or the crown that shapes the man? Follow me now into the labyrinth of power, ambition, and betrayal that was my life, and witness how the boy born to rule was slowly, inexorably transformed. My path to power was carved not by the gentle hand of fate, but by the unyielding grip of necessity. In my youth, I walked beside my father, Septimius Severus, as he conquered lands and consolidated the empire. We traversed Gaul, Britain, and the wilds of the East, witnessing firsthand the brutality and glory of empire. These campaigns were both my education and my burden, preparing me for the moment when I would wear the purple myself. But the crown, as I would learn, never rests lightly on any head. In 211 CE, my father lay dying in Iberacum, modern-day York. With his last breath, he made a plea more a command that I rule jointly with my brother, Geta. Be harmonious, enrich the soldiers, and scorn all others, he said. The words, both a warning and a curse, rang in my ears long after the torches had dimmed. Harmony between me and Geta? It was as impossible as asking fire and ice to coexist. Even in mourning, we glared at each other as enemies do, each knowing that Rome could not suffer two masters. The seeds of our rivalry quickly sprouted into full-fledged conflict. The court became a theatre of intrigue, each faction scheming for dominance. Though nominally co-emperors, every decision was a struggle. I, Caracalla, favoured the soldiers and sought glory on the battlefield, seeking to continue my father's legacy of military strength. Geta, in contrast, preferred civil administration and favoured policies that undermined my ambitions. Our mother, Julia Domna, tried to hold us together, but even her influence could not overcome the poison of our division. I made my move. In December 201 CE, I invited Geta to a supposed reconciliation meeting, luring him with promises of peace. Instead, I struck assassins were unleashed, and my brother died in our mother's arms. His blood was on my hands, and Rome was mine alone. Some call it fratricide. I call it destiny fulfilled. But do not mistake me. No man kills his brother and remains unscathed. His death haunted me, a ghost at every council, a whisper in every shadow. I purged his supporters, executed thousands, and solidified my rule through fear. Yet my ascension was not merely the act of a bloodthirsty tyrant. The empire demanded strength, and I gave it. I lavished the army with rewards, increased their pay, and ensured their loyalty. I extended the Constitutio Antoniniana, granting citizenship to nearly every free man in the empire, bringing unity, or so I believed. But beneath the surface, discontent festered. But not all saw my acts as just or wise. With my brother gone and my enemies crushed, I stood alone atop the throne of Rome. But the scars of my early career never healed. They festered. I demanded loyalty, obedience, and submission from all who crossed my path. My reign had begun, but the echoes of betrayal would follow me every step of the way. In gaining everything, had I already lost myself? The next chapter would answer, as I sought to transform the empire and myself while battling shadows that never truly left. As sole ruler of the Roman Empire, I seized the reins of power with unrelenting determination. The years following my ascension were marked by drastic changes, reforms, and a legacy that, I confess, I hoped would immortalize my name. My predecessor, my father Septimius Severus, had laid a foundation of military might and centralized authority. He taught me that Rome's survival rested on its legions' loyalty, purchased with gold, blood, and unwavering strength. But where he wielded both diplomacy and force, I believed only in force. Some call this a flaw. I deemed it necessity. Where Severus built alliances and stabilized provinces, I focused on the army. The soldiers were the empire's backbone, and I lavished them with riches, gifts, and privileges beyond measure. I was not merely their emperor, I was their champion, marching with them, eating with them, and fighting at their side. My predecessors treated the legions as tools. I made them my brethren. In return, they adored me as militaris, the soldiers' emperor. Yet this came at a cost, for the treasury groaned under the weight of my largesse, and the provinces bore the brunt of heavy taxation. The common people grumbled, the senators whispered treason. My reign, like my father's, saw conflicts along Rome's vast frontiers. I waged brutal campaigns against the Alemanni and the Parthians, projecting Rome's power to the edge of the known world. But unlike my father, who tempered his ambition with pragmatism, I pursued conquest for glory's sake. I imagined myself as a new Alexander the Great, crossing lands and bending them to my will. I revelled in the thrill of battle and the sight of defeated foes. Rome, under my rule, would either bow or break the world. I also enacted reforms meant to solidify my power, but these reforms were not without their critics. Chief among them was the Constitutio Antoniniana, the Edict of Caracalla, granting Roman citizenship to nearly all free inhabitants of the empire. To my mind, it unified and strengthened the empire, binding more people to Rome's fate and filling the coffers with much-needed tax revenue. But some saw it as a cynical ploy, a way to extort more taxes from those who could ill afford them. My father had wielded law to consolidate power. I used it to extend dominion, perhaps without care for the burden it placed on the common people. The differences between us ran deep. Where Severus saw Rome as a delicate balancing act, a mix of diplomacy, military strength, and political manoeuvring, I saw Rome as a beast to be tamed or destroyed if it resisted. My methods were harsh, my justice swift and unforgiving. I tolerated no dissent, crushed rebellion with ruthless efficiency, and demanded absolute loyalty. My predecessors' reigns were marked by calculated rule, mine by ferocity. In contrasting my reign with that of those who came before me, I realize now that I shaped the empire as much as it shaped me. But did I build or did I destroy? The legacy of my reign was blood and conquest, a double-edged sword. And as whispers of discontent grew louder, I began to understand that my enemies were not only external, but within the very heart of Rome itself. They too would have their reckoning. The shadows were closing in and the end was coming. But it would come on my terms, or so I thought. My death, the culmination of every choice I had made, would soon arrive. The sun was harsh in the year 217 CE when fate came for me. I, Caracalla, who had reigned with fury and fear, met death not on the battlefield, as I always imagined, but in the deceptive quiet of travel. My end came suddenly, cruelly, and far from the grand legacy I sought to carve. I had led my legions eastward to continue my campaign against the Parthians. I sought to surpass even Alexander's conquests, believing that only by expanding Rome's borders could I cement my greatness. But in my march toward glory, I made enemies of those around me, not just among the senators and conspirators at home, but within the ranks of those closest to me. Trust was a luxury I could not afford. My paranoia grew, and I surrounded myself with guards and spies, all the while knowing that betrayal often hides within the closest circle. On the road to Curry, I dismounted to relieve myself, a brief moment of vulnerability for a man who had lived with a sword at his side. It was then that Julius Marcialis, one of my own bodyguards, struck. A knife plunged into my back and I fell to the dust. There was no great battle, no grand final stand, only the hard earth and the cold realization that my reign was over. The betrayal was orchestrated by Macrinus, my Praetorian prefect, a man I had entrusted with great power proof, perhaps, of the thin line between loyalty and treachery. As I bled out, a rush of memories consumed me. I thought of my father, who had warned me of ambition's curse. I thought of Geta, whose death I had orchestrated, and of the countless lives spent to maintain my rule. Would the people mourn their soldier emperor, or would they celebrate the end of tyranny? My breath came in shallow gasps, and the answer eluded me as darkness closed in. I had built my empire on fear and blood, and now it claimed me. My death did not usher in a golden age for Rome. It marked only the brief reign of Macrinus, a man who would fall as swiftly as I did. My fall was not glorious, and the dreams of empire I had pursued with such ferocity dissolved with my final breath. In the end, the mighty Caracalla, a warrior, a ruler, a man both feared and hated, died not with the clash of swords, but by the silent betrayal of one trusted too closely. As I fell, I wondered, was it fate, the curse of ambition, or my own hand that brought me here? My death was but a chapter, but it set the stage for reflections on what my life had truly meant. The shadows claimed me, but the legacy of my rule, both its brutal might and the scars it left upon Rome, would remain. The next chapter beckons to explore this legacy, the price of power, and what remains when an emperor falls. In death, my name became a rallying cry, a curse, and a legend all at once. The legacy of Caracalla, the soldier emperor, has been debated and dissected by those who followed. To some, I am the embodiment of ruthless ambition and military prowess. To others, I am a cautionary tale of tyranny's corrupting influence. History often chooses its villains and heroes, but in my case, the truth lay tangled somewhere in between. My reign, marked by conquest and reforms, cast a long shadow over the Roman Empire. The soldiers continued to remember me fondly. How could they not? I had given them wealth, honour, and loyalty unmatched by any emperor before me. They marched in my name, even after my death, remembering Caracalla as the emperor who walked among them, who shared their victories and burdens. My focus on the legions cemented the military's dominance in Roman politics, ensuring that future emperors would live and die by the favour of their armies. But there was more to my legacy than military splendour. The Constitutio Antoniniana, my edict granting citizenship to nearly all free men of the empire, remains a symbol of unity or exploitation, depending on whom you ask. Some see it as my greatest achievement, weaving the provinces into a tighter bond with Rome and extending the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. Others see it as a desperate grasp for tax revenue and control, a burden on those who gained more obligations than rights. Did I bring the people together, or did I merely weigh them down beneath the empire's relentless demands? My rule was also stained by blood, the purges, the executions, and, above all, the murder of my brother, Geta. It was an act that forever defined me, a wound that would never truly heal. I sought to eliminate division and secure my place as sole ruler, but in doing so, I alienated the people and fueled dissent that would simmer long after my death. I am remembered as a tyrant because of the blood I spilled, justly or not. And what of my desire to be another Alexander? I dreamed of glorious conquests and vast empires, but my aspirations led to unfinished campaigns and instability. The Parthian wars I initiated drained Rome's resources and left the eastern frontier vulnerable. My obsession with military glory overshadowed the needs of the state and fractured the delicate balance that my predecessors had maintained. In the end, my legacy is as complex as the man I was. Rome remembered Caracalla as a ruler of extremes, fearsome, ambitious, generous to his soldiers, but brutal to his foes and even his own kin. I left an empire changed, for better or worse, and my name became a symbol of the cost of unbridled power. The lessons of my reign lingered, warning future rulers of tyranny's lure and its consequences. My legacy was not of peace or prosperity, but of the iron grip of a ruler who lived and died by the sword. Yet, as you reflect on my life, I ask you this: can an empire built on conquest and ambition truly know peace? Was I the cause of its suffering, or merely its product? The answer lies in the next reflection, a question of worth and of tyranny's place in the arc of history. Now I ask you, was it worth it? Was the blood, the ambition, and the power I seized worth the cost? The answer, as with most things, is tangled in shadows. As Caracalla, I strode across Rome's stage as both a hero and a villain, a symbol of both strength and fear. The throne demanded absolute loyalty and endless sacrifice, but its rewards were fleeting and often bitter. Looking back, I cannot ignore the tyranny I embodied. I ruled with an iron fist, demanding obedience and extinguishing dissent with ruthless precision. I thought that to maintain power, fear must be my weapon and conquest my shield. But tyranny is the antithesis of the virtues Rome claimed to champion: equality, freedom, liberty, and democracy. In my pursuit of power, I crushed these ideals beneath my sandals. Tyranny sows fear and distrust, and while it may hold a kingdom together for a time, it cannot nurture a true, lasting peace. Tyranny thrives on division and oppression. I saw this firsthand in my relentless pursuit of control. The empire I ruled was weakened, not strengthened, by my heavy hand. My acts of violence, from purging my brother's supporters to suppressing rebellion, did not unite the empire, but fractured its heart. Tyranny breeds resistance, and for every enemy defeated, more would rise. If we, as rulers, treat people as pawns and deny them dignity, we create the very chaos we seek to prevent. I have come to understand that tyranny is the enemy of all who value justice and liberty. It twists ambition into cruelty and turns the dream of empire into a nightmare of oppression. The people deserve more than the whims of a single ruler. They deserve a voice, respect, and the freedom to shape their destiny. I failed in this regard, and history rightly remembers me as a cautionary tale. But was it all darkness? Perhaps not. There were moments of unity, glimpses of what might have been, a Rome where every man was a citizen, and every soldier knew loyalty not born of fear but of shared purpose. I strove to expand Rome's reach, but in the end, I must admit that my ambition outstripped my wisdom. My dreams were of glory, but the reality was one of scars. As you consider my life, I implore you to see beyond the blood and tyranny and understand the cost of unchecked ambition. Power is a seductive force, but when wielded without restraint or compassion, it destroys both ruler and ruled. Tyranny is an easy trap to fall into, and its legacy is ruin. For those who wish to learn of my reign, I invite you to walk the paths I once walked. Travel to the ruins of the baths of Caracalla in Rome, my grandest gift to the people, and reflect on what remains when ambition turns to dust. Seek out ancient coins bearing my likeness, each one a story of power and loss. Feel their weight and remember the man behind the face. May my life serve as a warning to those who dream of empire, and may we all strive for a future built not on fear, but on justice and unity. In the end, I, Caracalla, ask you not for forgiveness, but for understanding. The shadows of my reign linger, but perhaps they can illuminate the path that leads away from tyranny and toward a better Rome and a better world. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and share, and check out the other videos in our My Life as a Roman Emperor series, where first-person narratives bring to life of ancient Rome alive. And take our quiz to see if you're a Renaissance spirit. Our next video in the series will be from my brother, Publius Septimius Geta, who tells his story. Turn on notifications to find out when that is live. And remember, history isn't dead, only our understanding of it. Vive Renaissance Spiritus!